Hi and welcome to another Strong Like Mum video, and this one is all about scar tissue post-abdominal surgery, so after something like a C-section, and how that scar tissue can affect our exercise program and what exercises we can do to help us rehabilitate our core after abdominal surgery. So I did a post about this really recently on my Instagram and just mentioned a few ways that scar tissue can affect us physically. So for example, we know that scar tissue only ever reaches about 70% strength of the tissue it's replaced. So even though it might feel tougher, it's actually weaker. There's also research out there to suggest that emotional stress can trigger scar tissue regrowth. So it's really important that we understand the value of staying calm, practicing mindfulness, and finding ways to relax in the postnatal period. We also know that scar tissue can attach or wrap itself around other organs, or attach other soft tissue to other soft tissue, which can create all sorts of pelvic instability and muscle inhibition. And that's really what I wanted to talk about today. So if you've had a C-section, and in fact, if you just have a weaker core, some things that we will notice postnatally. So traditionally during pregnancy, with the growing bump, you'll have sort of an anterior forward tilt of your pelvis, which sometimes, that comes with its own issues. Sometimes we can have lordosis, like an excessive arch of the lower back. But if people postnatally, because we have all these trigger words like pull your abs in, or squeeze your glutes, or engage your core, and lots of people don't know what engage your core means. So they just squeeze and tighten, pull their abs in, squeeze their glutes, tuck everything under, tuck under, that's another one that we'll hear. And everything just gets squeezed tight. And what we then have is a posterior tilt of the pelvis, which creates its own issues. So we might see women suffering from aches and pains. And those aches and pains are actually not felt where you might think they are. So our whole body is connected myofascially. So we've got a deep myofascial system and a superficial myofascial system. I won't go into too much detail about that in this video, but it's important to understand that the pelvic floor is attached to areas of the body that you might not expect. So women can often feel aches in their neck or in their back or even in their feet, and that can be a result of an instability within the pelvis or pelvic floor dysfunction. It's also really common, another really common symptom is urinary incontinence. So this is a pet peeve of mine. So I hear all the time, I heard it the other day, oh, I wee a little bit when I jump, but that's normal, isn't it? And it's important that we understand the difference between common and normal. So yes, urinary incontinence postnatally is very common, but it's not the new normal. It doesn't have to be your new normal. There are ways that we can work on rehabilitating our core and our pelvic floor properly with exercise. And if it still persists, the problem still persists, then you might need to speak to a medical professional or a women's health physio specialist. But urinary incontinence is absolutely not normal. But what we also will see with women with a weakened core, in particular if you've had a cesarean section and have scar tissue there, is an inefficiency, a loss of efficiency of muscles and during movement. So for example, I'll have women say, oh, all I did was walk up the stairs and I'm so tired. And it's because they're overcompensating, and they're using, overcompensating and making the movement much harder because there's a loss of inefficiency. So that's what we want to work on, getting back in our movement. So before I begin talking us through exercises that we can do post-abdominal surgery that are going to help us rehabilitate our core, it's important that we understand the core. So your core is much more than just your abdominal muscles, and it's much more than just your abdominal muscles on your pelvic floor. People have sort of cottoned on to the pelvic floor over the last few years, and that's really understood that that's an important muscle group that we need to be working, but it's so much more. So there's something called the thoracic-pelvic cylinder, and it's anything from your rib cage down to your pelvis, and with a whole 360 approach. And all of that encompasses your core. There are so many different muscle groups in there, and it's important that we get them all working in synergy. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to be talking about breathing, why that's so important, posture, alignment, and finally movement. So breathing, again, I'm not going to delve too much into that in this video, but there is a video on my Instagram TV where I talk about reconnecting with your core postnatally, and it's a fantastic breathing exercise called 3-dimensional breathing, And it's so important. Not only will that breathing techniques, check out that video if you haven't watched it yet, not only will that video help us to reconnect with our deep core muscles and our pelvic floor muscles, but it's also, breathing is also really important for women with scar tissue, because when you take a deep inhale and your diaphragm descends, it helps to move the organs, almost massage the organs, and helps to move them, which keeps that scar tissue mobile. So it's important that it doesn't tighten and harden. And by taking nice deep breaths and the correct 3-dimensional breathing, that's going to help us achieve that. But as I said, breathing will also help us connect with our deep core muscles. So if you haven't watched that video of reconnecting to your core postnatally, do go to that video on my Instagram TV. That is the #1 exercise I would recommend, whether you've had a cesarean or not, postnatally. Once we've achieved that, it's important that we look at our posture. So we want to make sure that our thoracic-pelvic cylinder always stays in good alignment with our neck, all the way down to our coccyx, and then that our feet are underneath us as well, in that really good alignment. So there are exercises that we can do that are going to help us achieve that, and I'm going to talk through that now. Just before I do, the next thing that we want to do is look at muscular release. So again, before we get to our exercises, it's muscular release. So tight muscles don't work efficiently, so we need to make sure that we're not only tightening and squeezing. As I said, we often see this pulling in at the abs, squeezing of the glutes, tightening of the pelvic floor, and we have this real obsession with squeezing and tightening when the pelvic floor, again, a really good example, Kegel exercises, fantastic, they certainly have their place. Yes, we do want to strengthen the pelvic floor, but we also need to know how to relax and release the pelvic floor. When it comes to muscular release, as I said, the core is a really large area. We don't just want to learn to release our glutes, which is vitally important. We have a culture today of squeezing and tightening glutes. Just as a little test, when you're walking around your house, every time you're boiling the kettle or every time you get to traffic lights, just think about relaxing your glutes, and you'll see how often you're squeezing and tightening your glutes. And it's not, it's pretty much impossible to relax your pelvic floor with tight glutes. If you now squeeze your glutes really tight and try to relax your pelvic floor, it's really difficult. So learning to relax our glutes, relax our pelvic floor, that's important. It's going to help give space for those organs to descend. As we take that deep inhale, we relax the pelvic floor, organs descend. We're going to keep that scar tissue nice and mobile. We also want to make sure that we are relaxing our lats. We can do that with a foam roller. Our lower back, we don't foam roll our lower back, but there are stretches and exercises we can do to target those muscle groups. As I've mentioned, our glutes we need to foam roll or stretch, and also our oblique muscles we need to learn to keep mobile. And the reason that is so important for something like diastasis recti, for example, which is the separation of our rectus abdominal muscles via the linea alba, if we've got really tight obliques, and that's characterized by this V shape here, I used to have very tight obliques, our obliques have an attachment point to our rectus abdominis, and when the diastasis recti is trying to repair and recover and come back together, if we've got overactive obliques, they can actually exacerbate the issue by pulling on that rectus abdominis and really hindering the recovery of the linea alba coming back together. So learning to keep our glutes nice and mobile is also really important. So we've got breathing, we've got muscular release, and then we're going to move on to posture and movement. So what movements are best? The first thing we're going to do, I want you to do if you're post-abdominal surgery, is to assess your core stability. So we've got core strength, core mobility, and core stability. And these first few exercises are purely to assess your core and just feel whether it feels the same both sides. So we're going to start with single legs. So we take a deep inhale, arms by your side or arms on your hips. Deep inhale. As we exhale, we push to one leg. And just feel how that feels. Inhale, other side, exhale. Do you find one side easier than the other? Do you find, inhale, exhale, do you find that you're gripping your toes on one foot? As I said, remember your feet are connected to your pelvic floor muscles all the way up to your jaw, myofascially. So are you squeezing your toes? Inhale. Exhale. If you are on one side squeezing your toes, that might indicate that you've got an imbalance in your core with your pelvic floor muscles that needs to be rectified. That can be a result of a weakened core and scar tissue post-abdominal surgery. So that's the first one. Once you've achieved that, inhale, exhale, we're going to take the arm out, and this movement of taking the arm out is just going to help to shift our center of gravity, and we have to pull it back. So how does that feel? Can you achieve that? Is that easier on one side? That for me is much easier on that side than we have here. So how does that make us feel? Then simple things like rotation, so arms on your hips or arms by your side. Inhale, exhale, just rotate the torso, keeping your lower body nice and still, facing the front, just rotating the upper torso. How does that feel? How have you got spinal rotation? Is it equal both sides, or are you tighter on one side than the other? And finally, inhale, exhale, just lifting an arm up. Now we're not just going to lift this arm, we're going to use our upper back to engage. Inhale, exhale, we push down to lift up using our lats muscles, still part of our core in that thoracic-pelvic cylinder. Lifting one arm up, keeping that arm nice and close to your ear, keeping it nice and close to your side. Inhale, so it's not out here, it's close to us. Exhale. And as you exhale, we're going to work on drawing up the pelvic floor, and we're going to squeeze our lat muscles, and we're going to pull our arm up and inhale to release. So those are assessment exercises, feeling how it feels one side to the other and seeing whether or not one side is harder for you than the other, whether it's more of a challenge. Once we've done that, we're going to move on to lying down supine exercises. So again, this first exercise is an assessment exercise. So we're lying down on the floor. I'm just going to make sure you can still see me down there. Yeah. Okay, so we're lying down on the floor. We've got our heels up. We take a deep inhale, we relax, keeping that pelvis in neutral, knees hip width apart, arms by our side. We inhale, getting that three-dimensional breathing that I mentioned in the other video. Inhale. As we exhale, lifting one leg. Okay, so we're going to draw up our pelvic floor in that one, as I mentioned in the three-dimensional breathing video. Inhale, exhale. And how does that feel with those single legs? Okay, this exercise now goes from an assessment exercise into there's also a video on my Instagram TV, I should mention, a postural realignment video. Do check that one out as well, because that's fantastic for just checking that alignment in our posture and how we achieve that. This exercise is from that, but we progress it on. So we inhale, we exhale. When you're ready, we lift one leg, we lift the other leg. Come to join. Both legs together. Inhale, exhale, lower. Good. Okay, we're then going to, if you've got a towel, you can place it between your arms and your elbows. We inhale, we exhale, we take the arms overhead. Good. Again, without gripping, we don't want to squeeze the glutes. We should have nice relaxed glutes in this position, drawing up the pelvic floor. We inhale, relax. Good. Exhale, bring the arms back over. That keeping that towel or Pilates ball between our arms is going to help with that, keeping that alignment. So we inhale, exhale, overhead. Inhale, relax the pelvic floor. Exhale. Okay, so those are then the next two exercises to progress onto. Then we are going to move on to an exercise that is really fantastic for postural realignment, and this is the final one of these exercises that I would suggest working on before we start to take all these techniques and use them in movement, which will be a separate video. So we're going to be in a modified plank position, and what we want to focus on is making sure that our neck is in good alignment with our thoracic-pelvic cylinder, staying nice and in line down the spine all the way to the coccyx. We keep our knees hip width apart, and we're going to keep them directly underneath our pelvis. So we want to make sure, by keeping that good alignment in that thoracic pelvic cylinder, that our pelvis is stable and equal. Those single leg exercises have helped us, are fantastic for helping us assess that, and also helping us to work on that core stability. We're going to put our forearms onto a surface. Now, the higher the surface, the less intense it is for your core. So we're going to have, if you want to have a higher surface like a chair or a sideboard, then do. We're going to place our arms on this sideboard, tucking the feet under, knees underneath our hips. We inhale, we exhale, and we're going to push up onto our toes. So we inhale, exhale. Now can we hold this position, engaging our pelvic floor, but without squeezing our glutes? So if you're squeezing your glutes, that's incorrect. We want to relax the glutes, and we want to keep that alignment. So we're not here, we're not there. We're keeping that good alignment, keeping our head up. Don't drop your head down. We keep our head up, otherwise our neck is not in alignment. Inhale, release. Okay? So if you can do this in front of a mirror or with a partner, even better. Inhale, exhale, we push up. To progress this exercise, we step the legs out, and we're in this elevated plank position. We are not squeezing the glutes, we're drawing up the pelvic floor. We're not just squeezing our abs. Good, keep breathing. Inhale, exhale, lower down. And that exercise is really fantastic for helping us to work on that good alignment and activating our deep core muscles correctly and working on that core stability. So that would be my advice for anyone who has had abdominal surgery or just in general has a weakened core postnatally. We want to start with breathing. That's going to help us massage the organs and keep that scar tissue mobile. After that, we want to work on muscular release, so releasing the muscles in the core so that we don't have a tightening on one side that's going to create any imbalance. We then want to look at our posture. There is a video on postural corrective exercises for postural misalignment on my Instagram TV. We're then going to work on core assessment exercises, which are also helping us to work on our core stability, which is really important. And then we're going to work on that final exercise, which is going to help us to really work our core efficiently and with using the correct muscles at the correct times. And then what is important after that is that we start to use all of that in movement. So when we take a squat, are we keeping that alignment? So we're not squatting this way. Are we keeping that good alignment? Can we lunge with good alignment? Can we lift and carry, keeping that good alignment, keeping that good breathing control, working on controlled movements? How we move all of this practice into movement is going to be a separate video that will be coming up in the next few weeks on my Instagram TV. Hopefully that has helped anyone who has had an abdominal surgery, whether that's a cesarean section or something else. Hopefully this video can help you. If there are any questions, post them in the comments below, and thanks so much for joining me again for this video. Bye.